I did want to have this specific topic because I don't think we should be scared of it. I think we should be able to talk about it in a responsible way. So first, as always, we're going to let them kind of let you get to know them and answer, how did you meet your wife? Whoever wants to get it first.
Well, we met at the welfare department. We both were working at the welfare department, or I was hired at the welfare department. We weren't in line or anything. But she was working there already, and they had a program. At that time, the kindergarten was not a free public kindergarten. It was kind of like the pre-K is now. It was selected based on eligibility, and they needed people to kind of take applications and kind of monitor that program. So she was already working there. I got hired, I started working there, and after a few weeks I asked her out. She said no. Kind of got a little bit hurt by that, but anyway, I didn't ask her again for a few more weeks. Decided to give her another chance. One more. So I gave her another chance, and she said yes this time. So pretty much we were together after that. And we dated for about 15 months, and then got married in August. That was, we had our first date in May of '77. So in August of '78 we got married. So this year will be 41. Wow. So, all right. But that's kind of how it started.
Sure. I met my wife in Memphis. She was going to college at the time, and I was there visiting my younger sister. I had just joined the Navy, and I was about to be sent to basic training, boot camp, and I had a friend that was dating a girl that knew my wife, Marcia. They didn't know each other, my friend, and didn't know her. So it was a blind date. And we knew each other for almost 6 months after the first date, and we were together in each other's presence where we could actually hold hands and smooch. 19 days, and we got married. Now, I need to qualify that because we didn't have to get married. Okay? After my basic training and my advanced school, which was in Jacksonville, Florida, we were married March the 29th, 1970, and we drove to San Diego to meet my squadron. I was in a fighter squadron in the Navy, and we had 6 months living together there before I went to Vietnam for the first time. And she came home, her parents, and we did that 2 more times. I did two combat tours in Vietnam and 3 months of a third one before my enlistment was up. So we kind of got to know each other a lot by letters and cards. The first 4 years we were married, I was gone. We were apart 31 months. So it was very hard. And our first child, our oldest son, was born 8 years later. We decided to wait until made sure I was going to make it back, and then we both had good jobs in San Diego, and we stayed for a few years, and we were working our way back. Finally got back to Amory, Mississippi, or just outside of Amory, and that was 49 years ago. But we've had 4 good years. That's the part where my wife says the 4 years I was gone overseas.
I feel underqualified. I mean, 40 and 40. I can't touch that. You know, so.
I'm at 1.5.
Okay,
so,
okay.
yeah.
Well, me and you same boat. Me and Lindsay will have been married 10 years next month. Is that right? We dated 5 years before we got married, and I had to ask her for that number. So she understands that. We actually we met through a mutual friend, Blair Chapman. I had worked at Big Red, and I was not working at Big Red at the time. I was helping Blair do catering jobs. Lindsay had started working at Big Red, and she had started coming over and helping us do that, and that's actually where we met.
What's Big Red?
It was a local grocery store,
Okay.
little local mom and pop grocery store. 'Cause I don't have any good stories.
I was expecting something funny, like she said no. It's been amazing how many of those we've had. I don't want to hear everybody's story now. All right, so right into the fun questions. Is it acceptable to kiss or make out? And if so, how long should you wait until that is appropriate?
Well, is it appropriate at all? Can you not do it? Well, I guess it's theoretically that's possible, but it's 2019, so I guess that the kiss is okay. When you go in, when you make out, that's a little bit more involved. If you go that direction, you want to make sure that your parents are in the other room, so with an air at the door, so that you don't cross limits. But in today's world, I mean, when did you start that? I mean, I guess that depends on the boy and the girl, and how long they dated, and whether it's something that kind of I guess has a life of its own, and it's different for different ones. But I can't really, for somebody that's dated very long, I mean, it's almost an impossibility, I think, not to kiss at least.
Times were a little bit different back in 1969. Not much, but a little bit different. We kissed on the very first date.
Maybe 90 days later, so.
Time was limited. Things were a little uncertain, so. But that's as far as it went. And then I was gone, and I didn't see her for another, almost 4 months. And then we had a couple of days on, I had to leave, so we kissed again. But there wasn't any passionate groping, making out. It just didn't happen that way. Marcia grew up in the church, and I didn't. How many of you had parents, or how many parents grew up in the church? And you got, okay. Well, I'm here to tell you, you have a distinct advantage. Now, you may not recognize that now, but you're gonna see as time goes by, you have an advantage, and it's going to be a level of maturity as you get a little bit older, and you'll begin to see how smart your parents were. When they say things now, you might snicker and you might pshaw. Well, that doesn't apply to me, but someday you're going to realize how wise your parents were.
Can you say that one more time? You're making me look bad, thank you.
Believe it or not, as I said, I was in the Navy. I don't have a tattoo, but I would like to get that one. Put that one on my kids too. But You really do. You're going to find out you've got a good advantage because you're going to have a good foundation. And I thank God every day. My wife is a double cancer survivor. 17 years breast cancer and 7 years ovarian cancer. Well, Cody will tell you I'll do anything for her. She doesn't take advantage of me, but I'd do anything for her. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I thank God she was a member of the church. She was our rock. That she grounded me and put me in my place and showed me what I needed to be doing. So.
Yes, it's fine. I mean, it is what it is, right? But, right, so just get ready for it. Life is full of buts, okay? It's fine, but you got to have control of yourself. They kind of mentioned it before. You can't let emotions, especially as we talk about dating, control what you do. I don't think we talk enough about the physical aspect of dating isn't what dating is about. Okay, so if you're going into the first few dates and all you're focused on is the physical kissing aspect of it, then you've really missed the whole point of dating. So I won't throw that out there as there's nothing wrong with it, but again, you got to be in control, right? I mean, you're going to hear that word a lot from me tonight anyway. Is control. So how long should you wait? 3 dates. I'm kidding. It's fun. So I saw that question today, and I'm reminded. No one laughed at all. I mean, I feel like you now Sunday mornings. Okay.
It's fun.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So I read that question, and when I first saw that question, the idea I thought about when we brought Noah. He's our son. He's 7. We brought him home from the hospital. We got everything packed up, and I looked at the nurse, and I knew who she was. I said, "Where's the owner's manual?" And she laughed at me. Okay, it's kind of like the same way. Life is messy. We don't get owner's manuals for everything we need to do. And then when I looked at this question, I'm like, "How long should you wait?" I can't answer that question. I mean, that's a hard question to answer. We don't get an owner manual to tell us how we should do things. But I'll refer back to what I said earlier. If we're only focused on the physical aspect of it, then I think we're setting ourselves up for problems. Especially when you're first meeting somebody, you really should be focused on the kind of person they are. What do we have in common? How do we get along? How do they treat other people? You really should get to be knowing people. Not to talk about him. It is not just first date kiss, but this
It was a good kiss.
Regretting you asking you here now. We're 10 minutes in. This is already my favorite class. All right, so I want to preface this one by saying that the kids sent in a lot of these. So when I say this, I sound like a teenager, but how far is too far?
I guess I'll go first. Well, one thing, they're looking for the right answer, but it's the wrong question. Because the question shouldn't be how far is too far. The question should be how can we stay, how can we stay pure, is the question to ask. And when you think about it in that aspect, then you're not wanting to say how far to go. You're looking at the other way, how do we stay pure? It's kind of like, maybe an analogy would be like if you're in a car, the goal is to go from point A to point B safely. And the goal is not to see how fast can the car go, can you take this curve without hitting the brakes, and that kind of thing. You're looking to try to be, safely get from A to B. So it's kind of the same way on that. And if you ask it that way, then you're not wanting to know how far. But you know that you want to stay pure.
Well, the limiting factor for us was distance. I'm in Jacksonville, she's in Memphis, so that we didn't have a lot of opportunities. And when we were together, it was usually you know, around her parents or, you know, family and friends. But honestly, we didn't think like that. We weren't concentrating like that. There were bigger issues that we were both facing, and so we didn't. It just wasn't something that bothered or tempted us.
Oh, my turn. Okay. So, if the question is having to be asked, have I gone too far? The answer is always yes. Okay. I mean, I think if we've ever got to that point in any dating relationship where we're looking back going, wait a minute, we messed up. We've got to a really bad point. I mean, when we ask this question, I think the question Cody, that's being asked is, you're looking for boundaries, right? You're wanting to know where's the line in the sand, because I want to get as close to that line as I can. And that's a bad way to be. It's a bad place to be, because just right on the other side of that line is sin. Okay, and so I think we need to understand that you know, the devil I think thrives on getting us to that boundary that we want to talk about. You know, that's his goal, is to get us to that boundary. That's the hard part. Okay? And you inch closer and closer to that boundary, because getting us over that boundary is really easy. Because the reality is, if you've gotten to that boundary, if you've gotten to the too far, you want to be there, right? And if you want to be there, then it's pretty easy to push you, you know, over a little bit further. So I think, you know, if we're talking about this idea too far, again, I go back to, we're in the wrong place. You know, we're not talking about dating as it needs to be talked about.
3 very good answers. All right, so a little bit different question here, but people will inevitably, especially being in high school, mock you if you have not, or you were trying to restrain yourself from having sex or anything like that. What would be a good way to deal with people who mock you for things like that?
Well, number one is, how would they know whether if you're abstained or not abstained? I mean, that is what they, who would know that, and how would they know unless you had declared to them one way or another? The other thing, that's almost like a bullying type of question. And, you know, how do you handle a bully? I mean, probably the best way is just ignore it as best you can and walk away, or ask them some kind of off-the-wall question like, well, that's a good question. Where'd you come up with that? Something like that, to just kind of maybe throw them off a little bit. But, you know, it's just probably ignoring and just walk away. And they're not your friend. Somebody that's your friend, if you talk to them about it, they're going to respect you. But that person's not your friend if they're going to ask you that kind of question.
Honestly, that see, I grew up in the '60s, the late '50s, early '60s, and I know it's a cliche, but things were a little bit different then. Things were happening so fast in the country. Friends of mine would go, and some didn't come back. And so there was a sense of urgency in just about everything that you did. And our thoughts weren't along that line. I'm sure that those instances came up. I don't ever recall anyone pressuring me or asking me, questioning me about my virginity. For a guy, I don't know, maybe that wasn't guy talk around when we, you know, I played ball, and it just wasn't something we talked about. Now the coach, that was a different matter. He wanted to, you know, if he had his way, you know, he'd lock us up at night and then let us out for practice and play. But that was a whole different thing. So it just didn't, those types of conversations didn't come up.
To me, this comes down to 2 things. Okay, one, I think part of this question of how do you deal with it comes down to your personality. Okay, so for some of us, we have personalities that we don't really care what others think, right? And for us, notice the pronoun I'm using, us. I'm very well aware of my my personality, right? For us, it's not an issue, right? Because you say something, if you happen to say something to me, I really don't care what your opinion is anyway, right? So whatever. In this regard, y'all. But there are others that have personality that are really, they want to be liked. They care about what others think. And for y'all to have that, I refer you to Lindsay. Okay, she's got all the books that can help you with that kind of personality. I don't. She says I have no emotions, and I say she has too many. We balance each other out. We do really well. Okay. So it comes out of personality. But if you have that type of personality that you're trying, that you're feeling, that you're want to please people, and that's really bothering you, the only suggestion I can give for that is, there's only a handful of people's opinions that you should really be concerned with, right? I mean, your family, those kind of things. And the reality for all of us in here is there's really only one opinion that really matters at the end of the day, right? And that's God's opinion. And it's not really what anybody here kind of thinks about that. The second thing I would think about when you say that is, who are your friends? I mean, grief. I mean, I know high school sometimes we won't get control of who we're around at times, but, I would really step back and question who are my friends if I'm having to explain this kind of topic to them, my beliefs and my opinions. So, and I will say this, on the friend side, and the last time I taught, high school class at the Chapman Church, I stressed it, every time I talked to them, I stressed them about their friends. Because, friends, good friends are a blessing. The bad friends will take you places you don't want to go. So, just a sidebar to that.
The thing I heard over and over again is, hang around good people, and you won't have to deal with that. And I think this is going to be, I mentioned this last week, but these guys are a little bit older than you. I'm ever so slightly older than you, but it's a lot easier for them to say this than me, and a lot easier for me to say this than y'all, but don't care. I mean, that's kind of hard for you to do at your age, I understand, but that's the big thing I got right there is don't care what other people think if it's this situation.
Cody, if I can interrupt just for 1 second.
Sure.
From coaching and being in the school business, you may think you're the only one. You are not. You're in many cases, the silent majority. The guy, and it's a lot of times it's the guys who run their mouths. They're the minority. It's just the problem is the majority don't speak up, but you are not alone. If you think you're being mocked or anything, there's more on your side than there is the other side. I promise you that. So have faith in that too if you're going through that in the locker room or the classroom or whatever the case may be.
I think to add on that from experience, I've seen if they're picking you out of that minority, that's probably a testament to you and your character. So I'd say
They're
that's a
insecure
good
in
thing.
their own ways, or they wouldn't be lashing out.
All right, so the next question is the temptation itself a sin? And at what point does it go from a healthy desire instilled in us by God to something that is a sinful urge?
Well, it definitely is not a sin to be tempted because Jesus was tempted. The Bible tells us that he was tempted in all points as we are, but he didn't sin. So, he was a man, and so he knew temptation. He just didn't yield to temptation. So definitely it's not, everybody's tempted. So, it's not a sin to be tempted.
Well, in our case, I mean, look, I married up in life. She was an athlete, played on a state championship basketball team, 5'8", long brown hair, brown eyes, good looking. And you have to ask yourself, are you in love or are you in lust? In our case, it wasn't long after, we had some time. I mean, we did get together a few times. We realized that we want to get married. And the moment, and I was 21, she was 19, the moment you realize that even at that age, you can grasp the concept of this person wants to live with me and grow old with me and stay with me the rest of their life. For me, that was a sobering revelation. So I didn't want to do anything to mess it up. So as I said, my times were a little bit different back then, and we got to know each other, like I said, writing letters and cards. And at 19 and 21, we thought we knew it all. Okay? We saved all those letters and cards. And how many of you know what an old blue hard shell Samsonite suitcase looks like? Okay? Well, that thing was full of letters. About 12, maybe 15 years ago, kids are gone, our kids are gone and living on their own, got grandkids. We found that old suitcase. We sat down in the middle of the floor, opened that suitcase up, and we put them in order. I write letter, the date, and put answer back and forth. We put them all in chronological order, and started reading them. Let me tell you, we sat there and we laughed, and we cried. The things that you think are important when you're 21 years old or not, it's not important. I mean, it is a concern, but it's not that important. Loving each other, having a strong faith in God, attending church regularly, listening, studying, digging, that's what's important. Don't care what other people think. I never have. Don't care. I've always gone my own way. So, and I've been on my own since I left home when I was 17, until I got my letter said, "Come, we want you." But those are the things that are important. And I know it's trivial, hearing it now from us old guys, because you may say, because I didn't think my parents had anything important to say, but you will one day say how smart he is, or how smart he is. You're going to get it.
I agree with David. The temptation itself is not a sin. It's not a sin any more than any other temptation that you face each day. I mean, the reality is, if every temptation was a sin, we'd all stay home in our closets all day, every day. I mean, you're right. You go outside and the world blasts you with temptation all the time, every time. I mean, Cody, you mentioned Sunday morning about sports. I mean, if you watch sports and commercial, guess what happens? It's a temptation, right? I mean, I hope, you understand it's a battle, right? I mean, you understand what's being done and you understand how to handle it and address it, right? So you got to understand that I think in this idea we're tempted so much by so many ways that sometimes we kind of lose sight of, am I getting too close? And I think that's where the danger comes in, is you're bombarded with it and you don't realize a lot of times, I think our trigger gets numbed a lot of times, and then we don't realize when we have gotten to a point that now we're in trouble. As far as when it becomes a simple urge, I think anytime that when at the moment we set our hearts on doing something that is against our Christian standard, compass, morals, whatever you want to call it, I think at that moment it's become simple. The temptation itself isn't simple, but the moment you set your heart to do it, and we haven't said a whole lot of Bible verses, but I'm going to use a Bible illustration here. I'm going to take Eve in the garden. We all know the story, right? The devil tempted Eve. He said, "Oh, look at the tree." She looked at the tree, the fruit, she touched it, tasted it, and there we have it. But I'm going to back up. Even before she did all that, she had pretty much committed in her heart that she was going to sin. And I say that because if she had not, then she wouldn't have looked at it. She wouldn't have started getting closer to the tree. She wouldn't entertain the devil. She would have said, I know, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not interested. I'm gone, right? So you got to be careful as you know, we get, you know, takes us back to the too far discussion. If we're looking for that line and we keep inching closer and closer and closer to that line, to that boundary, then it's going to take us too far over.
So you would say that once you make up your mind to try to accomplish something that you shouldn't, that's the point that it kind of crosses over the
I
line?
don't think so.
Y'all have anything to add onto that side of it?
Well, you know, when a basic desire becomes lust, when it turns into lust instead of, you know, you just have a glance at something that might be tempting or to you, but if you dwell on that, or you go over it in your mind and you take it and you make it in your mind, you go farther and farther, it becomes lustful. That's when then you catch yourself saying, well, you know, that's, whoa, don't go there. So, a lot of it's just, you know, your imagination.
Okay.
Don't turn to lust.
All right, so in my opinion, which I don't guess counts for much, but in my opinion, this might be the most important question I asked tonight, because a lot of things we look at it in terms of don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, and we don't look at the positive side of it. So the Bible tells us to wait, and we should do that simply because the Bible says it, but sometimes it comes easier to us when we kind of look into why. So in your own words, why is it important to wait until you are married?
I think there's probably two things. Number one is, if you're a Christian 100% through and through in everything you do. So you don't set apart this part of your life and say, well, I'm a Christian on these things, but I'm not a Christian here. And that's what you're doing. If you decide that you don't wait, then you're choosing to sin. So that destroys your relationship with God when you deliberately choose to say, okay, this part of my life is going to be different from all the rest of it. I'm going to be nice to people, but I choose to do this. So that you're choosing to sin, and you've in part of your life, and that goes against being what a Christian should be. The other thing is that it's something that, you know, that relationship and the physical relationship is something that should be shared between two people and them only, that they have that relationship. So if you did that, if somebody was not your wife before you got married and then you broke up, then you've lost that opportunity where it's only between you and your spouse that's shared with. So I think that's the reason. Another reason why that's important.
I think what my wife and I have is special. We have an understanding. Sometimes it's uncanny, and maybe it was because of what we faced early on. We just have this connection that, unfortunately, sometimes she finishes my sentences, and she knows what I'm going to ask even before I ask it. But just to know that this person is, I don't want this to sound be taken the wrong way. She is mine alone, and I'm hers, and nobody is going to have that, touch that, experience that. It's mine. That's special, and that's what you strive for. That's what we have, and we don't take it for granted. Now, in our 49 years, we've never had an argument, not one. Right? We had it. We heard someone say one night on a Wednesday night class that my parents told me that our heads should never hit the pillow in anger if we're upset with each other. I just kind of nodded. And Marcia doesn't say much, doesn't speak out much. But that night, she piped up and she said, yeah, and we've had 3 days of no sleeping. So, but what you want or strive for is that special connection that no one else has and no one else can intrude on. You look around you. Someday, you know, I know you might snicker at this, but one of these persons, that you might go out with them. You know, it might happen. Or they may be from another congregation, somebody that you met at Maywood or at CYC or something. Those, you know, it's going to happen that way, and that's what you want.
I'm going to give 2 reasons. One, I think, is a maturity level. Okay, you know, society really has moved away from what our marriage is about. Now, this is a marriage class, but it really has. Society does not like the whole being together, the for better or worse, the permanent nature of what a marriage is. You know, and there's the whole physical and sexual side of marriage that is meant just for that special bond between a husband and a wife, just as they talked about. And so, you know, I talked about the maturity level. When you just start off dating, you know, you're not mature enough for marriage. I mean, everybody in here that's married will tell you there is a massive gap between dating and marriage. I mean, you know, dating is, you know, it's equivalent to high school football versus NFL football, right? I mean, you're not, at that moment in time, you're not ready for that kind of commitment and that kind of maturity. It's just not there. The second reason, and I've mentioned this before, and I mentioned a couple more times, is I go back to we have to be in control of our mind, of our bodies, and our emotions. And I like to split the mind and emotions because I'm wired like that, right? I think that you've got to be able to pull those to a side and not be controlled by your emotions. There's a book called Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. If y'all have never read it, I'd encourage you to read it. He's kind of hard to read, but you know, I had a big paragraph in there about it, and Lindsay told me to cut it out, so I can't do that. But there's one, he actually has a chapter in the book called, I lost my place, Sexual Morality, and it actually fits what we're talking about right here, and he says, for any happiness, even in this world, quite a lot of restraint is going to be necessary. And when I read that, I was like, you know, that kind of sums this up. I mean, walking the Christian life is not always the funnest thing because we may feel that we're missing some things, but the reality is it's what we're commanded to do. And it's at the end of the day, you look back and you know, yeah, that was right. You know, at the time you may not think it, but like they said, you look back at life and you go, hey, I should have done that. That was what I should have done.
Because part of my job is putting myself in y'all's shoes and trying to see things from y'all's perspective, I'll throw this in there. I feel like I keep continuing because these guys are married. They have experienced it. They know what that special connection feels like. And I've only been married, we're nearing on 2 years now, so I'm a little bit closer to y'all than to them. So you can't understand it. And I know that's hard to hear, but these guys have wisdom that you do not. Hear that and understand that it is very special. There's not a lot you can say about it other than you don't know it until you experience it. So I wanted to point that out because I know y'all don't have the same perspective as they do. Moving on to the next one, though, what steps, as teenagers dating, what steps can they take to avoid temptations and avoid putting themselves into bad positions?
I think maybe a key in that is that when you're dating someone that if you date them for some period of time, that you have a conversation where you agree to set boundaries, and you set those boundaries, and your boyfriend, girlfriend agrees where those boundaries are, and then you hold each other accountable that you don't cross those boundaries. And if you've been dating someone and they don't agree with that, that's a red flag. That you need to just, okay, this can't go. We can't do this, and end it. But if you set boundaries and hold each other accountable, then that's a big step toward not crossing the line. If you can do that.
I'm gonna ask you kind of a leading question. I hope you say what I want you to say, but what if you don't feel like you can have that conversation with that person?
You don't need to be with that person if you can't have it. If they don't agree, if you're not the same type of person that you are and their standards are not the same, then at that point, you're best just stop at that point and go elsewhere.
You said what I wanted you to say.
That sounds good to me, but I think it was like an unwritten rule. And of course, I guess it depends on who you're choosing to date, and that can be pretty self-evident in itself. But if you stay true to yourself, you put your own restraints on your own self. That's first and foremost. You're only responsible for your own actions, and you I think in today's world, I think you can have that conversation, and you should, if with someone that you're going to date. Now, if it's just going to a movie and being friends, 4 or 5 people hanging around together, that's a little bit different than, going out with someone exclusively. So, but yeah, you could have, I think in today's world, you could have that conversation.
It's probably not a first date thing.
Yeah.
Get away a little bit.
That'd be an awkward first date.
Yeah.
Sort of agree with what they said. One of the things I think, and I've said it before, and I'll probably say it with others, be self-aware. Be self-aware of yourself. Be self-aware of your emotions, your tendencies. Self-aware of the person that you're with. And if you want to turn to a sports term, keep your head in the game. Notice when I'm constantly yelling and screaming and keep his head in the game. I think it's kind of the way we do. We always need to have our guard up and know what's going on. The second key, I think, is situational. Just sort of like your self-aware is, know your situation, know the situation you're in. I read an article, research for this, and said singles have a tendency to think more highly of their own self-control than they should. And I mean, we've all been here. We were young, we think we can handle anything that's thrown at us. And, yeah, we can, but sometimes we might not be able to. I mean, sometimes something happens and, we're not ready for that. And the situation was more than we could handle. So I think, to me, those are the 2 keys. And I kept doing research to find out over and over, make sure you're in a public setting. If you have an issue with, controlling your emotions or whatever, being alone with someone probably isn't the best thing. I have this article, I have to read it. It's so corny, but it was great. This preacher had an article, and he said, nothing good has ever come from a boyfriend or girlfriend cuddling on a couch watching a movie at 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. It has never ended in a discussion about cinematography and the history of watching movies on couches. I thought that was awesome. I love it. Y'all roll your eyes. I know you do. I love it. I don't care. But if you have a problem with that, putting yourself in that situation is probably not going to end well.
All right.
Can I add one other
Please.
thing? In capital letters, respect. That was the issue for me and my wife, was respect. I respected her. And she grew up in the church. I didn't. Look from the outside looking in, I saw she had something I wanted. I wanted to have what she had, and I respected that, and I respected her parents. So I wasn't going to do anything to mess that up, or try not to anyway.
All right. This next question not only applies to this topic, but basically any kind of temptation topic you can look at. You've heard the expression over and over again, just say no. That doesn't work. So when put into situations like that, how would you go about saying no in a way that might actually work?
But to me, it's almost like the answer to that is the answer to the previous question, is that if you hold each other accountable, then you don't get to the situation where one is pushing the other to try to cross a line. So you hold each other accountable, and you know, if you're doing that and somebody tries to say it's you're breaking the rules, you know, we set the rules of this, remember, and do it that way. But you know, if somebody says no and they really mean no, and somebody doesn't stop, then that borders, you know, that's sexual aggression or rape, you know, if that's the case, gets to that situation.
Well, again, I mean, I respected her, and I wasn't gonna do anything that would jeopardize our relationship in any way. So I held firm to that, and I think it worked out in the end, in the long run.
So to me, I don't know, I get a little harsh when I hear this with this phrase, because to me, and thanks for them for being really soft, because I'll be a little harsh, right? So to me, if we ever in a relationship and we get to a point where someone is uttering this phrase, then we went too far. I mean, everything is really broken down, okay? And you know, for a Christian guy or Christian girl, I mean, to me, if that's having to be said to you, then there's a complete failure. I mean, we have failed. We failed ourselves. We failed the person that we're with, because we have really not in any way lived up to the moral standards that we have. And that's harsh. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, the reality is, if we can't handle that statement, then we shouldn't be dating. I mean, we've completely missed the mark. I mean, that's one of those things you got to step back and reset yourself and go, wait a minute, what's happened that's caused us to get to this point? So.
Okay. Being realistic, people make mistakes. So if someone in high school has made that mistake, has had sex, what advice would you give them if they are still in that relationship, and if they are in a new one or looking for another one?
The answer would be the same in any of those. Is you repent. You just repent. You realize you've done something that you really didn't want to do. You've done something wrong. You've sinned. In the eyes of God, it's not correct. And you repent, and then you start over. You clean the slate. And you know, when God forgives you, it's as far as the east is from the west. So if you really repent, He really forgives. And you can start over again. And you know, if you're in a relationship, it'd be the same way. That start over. Even if you're in that relationship, just start with a clean slate and say, okay, we messed it up the first time. Let's do it right this time, and then just start again.
Well, yeah, if you don't have the avenue of forgiveness, then you know, that's, you're sunk. But we do, and it's not something that needs to be broadcast, and you don't have to wear it like a badge. But because it is, you know, it's private, and I believe, though, that with some reflection and maybe some conversation with someone that you trust, you can get back to a good feeling about yourself if you feel badly. I think that you can do that, but it may take some work. It may not happen overnight. But, you know, I've had to ask for forgiveness many times for some silly thing that I've said or done, you know, with my children, with my wife, But I know that because they love me and I love them, it's not a deal breaker. And just like God, it's not going to be a deal breaker as long as you've asked for forgiveness and you truly turn away and you truly repent and you do what you're supposed to, then you're going to be okay. You have to believe that.
I agree with both of them. I think there's two things. The first thing is they just thought, it's okay. I mean, I don't know that we truly realize how great it is to have a God that loves us and cares about us. Okay, I don't think we understand or truly appreciate that idea of grace. I don't think we talk enough about it. I don't think we preach enough about it. It's something wonderful that we get to have. And like they said, I mean, personally, everybody in this room, I know I made things that I'm so happy that God doesn't remember because
Can I add this? You don't want to be that person that goes out on Saturday nights sowing your wild oats, so to say, and then go to church Sunday morning praying for a crop failure. Okay? You don't want to be that person, but there is hope.
I'm gonna say that same thing in a slightly different way. But he's right. The thing about though, you don't want to beat yourself up. I mean, you don't want to have. We have this feeling we don't want to walk around depressed and sad because it is okay. But the second point I would say is it's not okay. Okay, it's not okay. It's not okay to continually do something that you know is wrong. I mean, we talked about this idea of grace, and grace is wonderful and great, but grace is for those who are striving and trying to do what's right and you make a mistake. Grace isn't what he talked about. I know what to do, but I just choose not to ever do it, and I don't want to do that at that moment in time. So grace doesn't work for that kind of situation.
All right. Well, we are already out of time, so I hope y'all don't have any closing remarks that are too terribly important. But
I had 15 bullet points.
I was still waiting on your PowerPoint.
Oh, man.
All right. Well, y'all think these guys, this is a difficult topic, and other than that, yeah, leave.